Welcome. Thank you for joining me. Have you ever felt like God has called you to do something, or God wanted you to do something, but you just wasn't ready? Maybe it was a relationship. Maybe it was a career change. Maybe it was a vocation. Maybe it was a big life decision, but you just wasn't ready. Turn with me to Genesis chapter 32. And in Genesis chapter 32, we're going to pick up in verse 26. We're going to go to verse 28. So it says, starting verse 26. Then the man said, "Let me go, for it is daybreak." But Jacob replied, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." The man asked him, "What is your name?" "Jacob," he answered. Then the man said, "Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans and have overcome." Now, isn't that so true of Jacob? I mean, if we look back over Jacob's life, we see how he has struggled with humans. And here he has just got through struggling or wrestling with God. I mean, think about when Jacob was first born. Jacob is the grandson of Abraham. He's the son of Isaac. He is the twin brother and the younger brother of Esau. And the Bible picks up at the beginning of Jacob's life, and it talks about Jacob being born with his brother Esau. His brother Esau was born first, but Jacob had a hold of his heel when he came out. So even then, it makes me wonder if there was some tussling and some wrestling and some grappling in the womb before they were even born. Is that Jacob's character, to just grapple and wrestle? But if we go through and look at his life, we see him grappling and wrestling with men all through his life. I remember a time when his brother Esau was a woodsman, was a hunter. And he would go out into the wild and catch wild game and bring it back and prepare meals for his father. And one time he had been on one of his hunting events, and Esau comes into the house and he is famished because he's been hunting. And he asks Jacob for a bowl of food. And Jacob begins to say, "I trade you this for your birthright." See, Esau was the oldest, so he had a birthright. Jacob was the youngest. Even though they were twins, he wasn't the oldest. He wasn't the firstborn. So he didn't have the birthright. The birthright fell with Esau. And so after some back and forth, finally, Esau said, okay, man, you can have my birthright. Give me something to eat. And so Jacob happily gave him something to eat for his birthright. Later on, we begin to see that Jacob ended up taking Esau's blessing. And see, it wasn't really Jacob's plot or scheme or strategy to take it. It really was his mother's. See, Esau and Jacob's father Isaac had got old. His eyes was weak. He couldn't see as good. And his time was coming for him to depart from this earth. And so he told his son Esau to go into the wilderness, catch wild game, come back and prepare him a delicious meal, because he wants to bless him before he leaves. He wanted to bless Esau. Now Esau goes out, he goes hunting, but the whole time Jacob's mother overheard this conversation. So she calls Jacob and she tells Jacob that your father Isaac is about to bless Esau. She didn't want Esau to have the blessing. She wanted Jacob to have the blessing. So here's where she comes up with a plan. She tells her son Jacob to go get his older brother clothes. He tells her, well, I'm a smooth man and my brother's a hairy man. If my father touches me, he would know that I'm not him. So he tells him, go get some wool. Let's put some wool on your arms, on your smooth area. So if your father touches you, he will think or be convinced that you're Esau. So they set off and they plot and they plan, and it actually works because Isaac ended up blessing Jacob. He blesses Jacob and says that he can have heaven's dew, which is just a general blessing. May the Lord bless you. Then he goes on to say, may the Lord make you rich and prosperous in earthly things. May you have abundance in wine and grain. So, Isaac blesses Jacob. And so now Jacob has the birthright in the blessing. Esau comes back after his hunting trip and he prepares a meal. He goes into his father, and he asks his father for his blessing. His father said, I just gave the blessing. He said, Father, you didn't bless me. So he said, who did I bless? He said, you blessed Jacob. Now Jacob has taken my blessing. He has taken my birthright. So he asked his father, do you have another blessing for me? And his father pronounces a blessing, but it's really not a blessing. He said, may the heavens do be far away from you. So may God not bless you. He begins to say, you will serve your younger brother. He began to then say that, you will not, he said, may the prosperity of the earth be far from you. So may you not prosper in the earth? May you not have abundance? So it really wasn't a blessing. And so Esau is furious because here's his younger brother, who he's been wrestling with his whole life since the womb, has took his birthright and then his blessing. So Esau says, I will kill Jacob as soon as our father has passed from this world. His mother hears this, doesn't want her son to die, so she sends Jacob off to live with his uncle, to his uncle's house, Laban, her brother. She sends Jacob off. So Jacob flees from Esau. Be careful who gives you advice. Be careful who you listen to. Because not every advice is good advice. Jacob goes to his uncle's house, Laban's house. And in there he falls in love with a beautiful girl by the name of Rachel. So he comes into covenant, or he makes a deal with his uncle Laban, and he says, Uncle, I will work for you for 7 years to have your daughter Rachel. The uncle agrees, and Jacob works for the uncle. Day in and day out for 7 years, he toils. He watches the sheep. He works with his uncle. He prospers his uncle. And after he prospers his uncle, finally, the 7 years are up. It is time for him to have his bride. So he goes, they do a wedding celebration. They're having fun. I assume alcohol was flowing. And the only reason I assume that is because when it was time to go into his tent, when it was time to go into his house and consecrate his marriage, his uncle Laban switched Rachel out for his other daughter, Leah. Jacob goes into the tent, I'm assuming drunk, not positive, the Bible doesn't say, but he consecrates his marriage. And it's not till the morning when he wakes up that he realized it was not Rachel, but it was Leah. Now, theologians and scholars tell us that Leah was a lanky, kind of skinny, dangly young lady. She wasn't too attractive. Some suggest she might even have a lazy eye. And Jacob is furious because this is not what he wanted. Jacob is a type of guy that will go after what he wants, even if he has to scheme or plot to get it. If he wants the birthright, he will wrestle and grapple from the womb his brother Esau to get the birthright. And if he still can't get it that way, then he will make a deal, wager, bet, or steal the blessing. Jacob is a man who goes after what he wants. He dedicated 7 years for Rachel and he didn't get her. So he's angry. He goes to his uncle, and his uncle's like, hey, man, trying to give him a smooth answer. Hey, It's not right for my youngest daughter to be married before my oldest daughter. How about you work another 7 more years and I give you Rachel? Jacob agrees to work another 7 years for Rachel because he is so infatuated with Rachel. And Laban get what he wanted. See, Jacob was prospering Laban. See, the blessing was on Jacob. It wasn't on Laban. The blessing was on Jacob. It wasn't on Laban. Laban was prospering off the blessing that was on Jacob. So I ask you, who was prospering off your blessing? Yeah, who is prospering off your blessing? The Lord has blessed you. Who is using you? Family? Laban was Jacob's family. He was. He was his uncle. But see, Laban was selfish. Laban cared nothing but about himself and maybe those in the household with him. It was Jacob who had the blessing. It was Jacob who had the promise. It was Jacob who would help and touch the world, the nation. All that was in Jacob. It may be in seed form, but it was in Jacob. The blessing was on Jacob, not Laban. Jacob decided to use his wit and go into a deal with his uncle. And he began to tell his uncle, hey, let me have a portion of the flocks that I watch, I keep, I steward. And his uncle agreed to give him the spotted animals, the spotted animals. And so Jacob basically, he began to breed his animals faster, more often, and he began to prosper and prosper and prosper. So eventually, he was more wealthier than Laban, but he was in Laban's house. And the 7 years had passed, and so he comes and he marries Rachel, the one he truly wanted. He marries her and he had babies with her. He also had babies with Leah, and he has these children. And then the Lord comes to him, and the Lord tells him to leave his uncle's house and go back to his country. So we see Jacob. He gets up, he gets all his possessions, he gets his children, he gets all his wives, his servants, and they leave Laban's house in the middle of the night or under the cover of darkness. And he sets off. Laban wakes up the next morning and begins to pursue Jacob. Jacob leaves his uncle's house at night because he's fearful. He thinks his uncle will take back his wives, take his grandkids, take all his possessions, and even kill him. He will not let Jacob leave. So Jacob left at night. Now Jacob left at the order of the Lord, but he's going towards Esau. He's got to go back to the country he fled from. He ran from Esau. Now he's running from Laban. He fled from Esau. He fled from Laban. He did Esau wrong. He robbed Esau. He cheated Esau. He did Esau wrong. Laban robbed him and cheated him and did him wrong. Jacob is glad to get away from Laban. So he takes off. Laban begins to pursue him. See, Jacob is in a hard position. He got one man pursuing him who he fears is going to kill him. He got another man he's running towards that he fears is going to kill him. So he's in a rock in a hard place. He's in a hard place. Have you ever been in a hard place? Hopefully you ain't been in a place where somebody's going to kill you, but have you ever been in a hard place? This is the place that Jacob is in. And so what does Jacob do? What he did first is, since he's going towards Esau, his brother who wants to kill him, Jacob kind of wants to butter him up. So Jacob begins to divide his flock and send gifts to his brother, telling him, your servant is coming behind, receive these gifts. So he's sending 250 and 30 animals. He's sending all these different groups of animals to brother his brother up. But the word that is coming back is your brother is coming. Esau is coming with 400 men. So Jacob is fearful. He thinks his life is over. He thinks they're coming to kill him. So what does he do? He sends his wife. He sends his children. He sends his servants. He sends all his possessions over the river, and he alone remains or stays back to pray. See, now at this moment, I can understand this. I can identify with Jacob in this moment. Jacob has to be up under pressure. He's running from a man who wants to kill him, robbing him, stealing, doing wrong, and running to another man who wants to kill him. He has to be up under pressure. I can understand Jacob here. I can understand being up under pressure, not knowing what to do. So the only thing that you can do, you have to understand, Jacob is a runner. He runs. At the sign of danger, he runs. He flees. He flees from his brother. He flees from his uncle. He runs. Anytime danger, Jacob is running. So, but he can't go back to where he came from, and he can't go forward, and he can do nothing else but pray. Have you ever prayed up under pressure? Have you had pressure on you and had to pray? How do you make life-altering decisions? Have you had to pray some things through? They used to say, heavy is the head that wears the crown. Have you had to make some hard, heavy decisions? I have. Who do you lay off? Who do you terminate? Who do you fire? Do you keep everybody and let the company go down? I have had to make some hard decisions. So I see and I understand Jacob here. But he's not doing nothing but what God has told him to do. So what happens when God tells you to do something, but you could lose your life? This ain't the first time. Wasn't it with his grandfather and his father, Abraham and Isaac, when they had to go up the mountain? What do you do when God tells you to do something, but you can lose your life? Now we're modern day Christians, so we understand it, and we know Matthew 10:28. Fear not those who kill the body, but fear the Lord, or fear the one who can kill the body and the soul. So we know the stand, but what will Jacob do? Because he's a runner and he has nowhere to run. So Jacob turns around and there is a man standing there. But I wonder, Jacob's a runner. Would he run, or was he really going to pray? Because he's a runner. Everybody's before him. Was he planning on running? Why was there a manifestation, a man standing there? And he began to wrestle with Jacob. And Jacob wrestled with that man all night long. I know what it is to pray up under pressure. Jesus prayed up under pressure before he went to the cross at Calvary. He prayed up under pressure. I think that this is Jacob's moment. This is a turning point for Jacob, because he turns and the man is standing there. But after this encounter with God, his life was never the same. This encounter with God, his name was changed from Jacob to Israel. This encounter with God, he became a new creature, a new creation. Have you had an encounter with God that changed you for the rest of your life? Have you had an encounter with God where you become a new creation? Have you had that encounter? See, Jacob knew of God. His grandfather was Abraham. His daddy was Isaac. He knew of God because of their relationship with God. So he had to at least know of God based on his father and his grandfather. But it wasn't until this moment, until he had an encounter with God. Have you had an encounter with God in the flesh of a man named Jesus Christ? Because see, from Jacob's encounter, he walked different for the rest of his life. He still made some mistakes. The Bible go on to call him Jacob in Israel, because every time he kind of, I guess we would say, backslid a little bit. But have you had an encounter with with this man, God in the flesh, Jesus Christ, that will change the way you walk for the rest of your life? Have you had that encounter? If you haven't, I invite you to have that encounter. That is the best kind of encounter. It changed Jacob for the rest of his life. Before then, God was known as the God of Abraham and Isaac. At that encounter, God became the God of Jacob's heart. And it goes on, and we begin to say that God is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It was that encounter that God became the God of Jacob's heart. I pray you have an encounter with God. I pray you have such an encounter with God that he becomes the God of your heart and you forever walk different. We would love to connect with you. Please visit our website. We would love to connect with you. Thank you again for watching. Have a blessed day. And I pray you have an encounter with the Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.